Hello everyone. Today we are going to cover chapter number 2, organizing data. This is the part 1 and this is the second video of the part 1. After completing this part, I'm hoping you will be able to, number 1, construct a frequency and a relative frequency distribution for a qualitative data, explain the type of grouping for a quantitative data, and construct the frequency and a relative frequency distribution for single value grouping. Right? So let's start how we're going to proceed. Frequency distribution for a qualitative data. Now this name seems very horrible, look like a very big name, but the idea is very simple. What is a frequency distribution? It's just a fancy name of a table. It's nothing but a table. It's a table. It's a table of values. And what type of table? A table of values, and how often a value is repeated, how often a value occur. In the statistics, how many times a value occur, it's a frequency, right? So frequency distribution is nothing but just a table of values and how often a value occurs. Now, in order to understand this idea, we have an example here. This political party affiliation of the student in the introductory statistics class is given in the following table. Construct a frequency and a relative frequency distribution. The data is this. Now a teacher, how this data come into existence? The teacher asked the student in the class, what is your political party affiliation? Some people say Democrat, somebody says Republican, somebody says other. D stand for Democrat, R stand for Republican, O stand for other. So how we're going to construct a frequency and a relative frequency distribution, I will explain now. Now, in order to understand, this is the data and how we're going to make a frequency distribution, a relative frequency distribution. The first step is you're going to make a table. This is the table I'm going to make, and this table will consist of 4 columns. This is very important that you understand. Whenever you are asked to make a frequency and relative frequency distribution, it means you start with a table consisting of 4 columns. Now you provide the column titles. This is here the name will come, the name of the political party. It's a party name. Party. So we have 3 parties here. D stand for Democrat, R stand for Republican, and O stands for other. In order to make sure that everybody lives in its own space, I'm just doing this rows here, right? And in this, now we move to the second column. The second column is called a tally. Right? How we do the tally stuff? It's like this. What we're going to do, we're going to copy this data in this column. So we have a Democrat, 4 Democrat. So 1, 2, 3, 4 Democrat and one other. R O R, it's a R O R, it's a O R. It's an O and it's an R. It's O R O, it's a O R O. When the fifth comes, I make it a back of a 5 like this. And this is D D. I have a D and I have another D. So R D D, it's a R, a D and a D. It's a D R. It's a D and it's an R. It's R O R. It's R O R. It's a D R. It's a D and it's an R. It's R O R. It's a R O R. It's a R R. R and R. It's R R O. It's an R R O. It's a O R. It's an O and it's an R. It's a R D R. It's a R D R. It's a D D. It's a D and it's a D. So I have copied all these values. I have tallied all these values into this column. The next column is called a frequency. So this is the frequency column. I'm writing a short for that, frequency. Now count them. 5 plus 5 plus 3 is 13. Next is 5 plus 5 plus 5, 15 plus 3 is 18. And a 5 plus 4 is a 9. So these are all the values I have obtained, and that's how you make such a table. One important thing, if you add all these values, the answer will comes out to be 40. And this answer has to be 40 because these are the 40 values. These are all 40 values. So this answer has to be 40. If that answer is not 40, then I would have been in a difficult situation. The next column we're going to write is called a relative frequency. Let me write a relative frequency. A relative frequency. And how we obtain the relative frequency? You take a frequency and you divide by the total. It's 18 over 40. It's a 9 over 40. That's how you obtain the relative frequency. And one other important thing, if you add all these numbers, if you add the relative frequency column, the answer is always comes out to be 1. That's one of the property. So you need to remember this property, that the sum of all frequency is always equal to the total number of observation, and sum of all relative frequency is always equal to 1. That's how you make a frequency and a relative frequency distribution, and that's how you're going to work. I just explained this one time. In the next situation, if I get the same thing, I won't repeat that. Now let's double check that. Do we get the same thing? You can check that same thing. I just showed it to you because when the teacher is doing on a kind of a board that people understand more, I would have shown you it like this. Now one important thing is note that that I have converted these fraction into a decimal. Just pause this video and think about what is the motivation of converting this into a fraction. Yes, the basic idea, you got it right. If that's the basic idea of converting this into a fraction is that we can easily can convert them into a percentage. That's the basic motivation of converting them into a decimal. So that's how you make a frequency and relative frequency distribution for a qualitative data. Let's move further. Pie chart I will cover in a separate video. The bar graph I will cover a separate video. I will show it. I will put it in the canvas. And now let's talk about organizing quantitative data. Remember this data we talk about, this was a qualitative data, right? These are the names of the political party. Now we're talking about how to organize a quantitative data, right? And for this purpose, we have a methods of grouping. There are 3 methods mentioned in your book. One is called a single value grouping. The other one is called the limit grouping. And the third one is called the cut point grouping. But today in this video, I'm going to cover only a single value grouping. What we do in a single value grouping, we use the classes in which each class represents a single value. And this type of grouping is useful when we have a discrete data and which has only a small number of distinct values. For example, I can organize my class on the basis of number of siblings you have. Let's say somebody have no siblings, that belong to a 1 class. Somebody has 2 siblings, that belongs to another class. And somebody may have 3 or 4 siblings. So each category is made by the number of siblings that you have. Such type of grouping is called a single value grouping. Each class represents a single value. All right. Now, in order to understand this, we have an example here. The example is the number of TV sets in each 50 randomly selected household is given in the following table. Use a single value grouping. Note that it's mentioned what type of grouping you have to use, and to construct a frequency and a relative frequency distribution. How we are going to do that, I will show you in a minute. So this is the data we have. These are the number of television in a certain household. Somebody say I have 3 television. Somebody say I have only 1 television. These are the 50 households which we get the data. We want to make a frequency and relative frequency distribution. The concept is the same. I'm again going to draw a table. I'm going to make a table, and that table will consist of 4 columns. That table will consist of 4 columns, right? Let me show you the 4 columns like this, right? Now I will write the name of each column. The first column will have a name of the variable. The variable name is number of TVs. Let me write number of TVs, right? Number of TVs. Let's start with the smallest value. The smallest value is 0. Let's start with 0 first. And the largest value is, I think it's 7. So I see a 7 or a 6. It's a 6, not 7. Sorry for that. It's a 6. So I take a 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and a 6. So let's make it in a way that everybody living its notes is in its own space. Let's do it like this. So that next column we give it a name called a tally. That's a tally, right? Now we do it like this, and I probably won't be able to complete it due to the shortness of the time, but you get the idea. 1, 3, 3. It's a 1, 3, 3. It's a 0, 3. It's a 0 and a 3. It's a 1, 2, 1. It's a 1, 2, 2, 1. It's a 3, 2. It's a 3 and it's a 2. It's a 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 5 times 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. I can complete that quite easily, right? I don't show it. You can do that easily. So if you have done all the steps correctly, you will end up with this table: number of television, frequency, and a relative frequency column. The frequency, it means what this table is saying, that there is one family which has 0 television. There are 16 families who have 1 television in their household, 14 with 2, and so on and so forth. Note that when I added all these numbers, the answer comes out to be 50, and it has to be 50. It has to be 50. Why? Because these are the total number of observations. It has to be 50. So remember, the sum of all frequencies is always equal to the total number of observation. And how I get a relative frequency? I divide each frequency by the sum. This number comes from 1 divided by 50. This number comes 16 divided by 50, 14 divided by 50. And again, if I add all these numbers, the sum will always come out to be 1. The sum of all relative frequency is always equal to 1. So that's how you're going to make a frequency and a relative frequency distribution by using a single value grouping. And this single value grouping is useful when you have a discrete values and you have smaller number of values, not large number of values. Let's say you have let's say 20 distinct values, and it won't be possible for you to make a column like here of 20 values. That won't be a good idea. So you have a discrete values, and they are small in numbers. Such grouping is very useful, like the number of television in a household, like the number of siblings you have, or like number of cars in your family. Whenever such a data is provided to you, the single value grouping is very useful. So I hope you understand these two methods. So if you have any question, please write me an email, and thanks for watching.